On today's show, Egor Demin is exceeding expectations during his rookie season with the Nets. A draft expert who has been inside Demin's workouts tells you why the Brooklyn guard has all-star potential on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik, Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. This show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And on today's episode, I got Corey Tulaba of No Ceilings coming on the show to talk about Egor Demin and some of the Nets rookies. He'll break down why he had Egor mocked to the Nets this time last year, why he feels he could have all-star potential, and also who is he the highest on of the rest of Brooklyn's rookies. So we'll get into all that right now. Let's go. Back on the show again, we got Corey Tulaba of No Ceilings, and we did some talk about the 2026 draft on the last episode of Corey. I want to get into some of the Nets rookies and how we've seen them perform, and we got to start with Egor Demin because there were a lot of Egor Demin non-believers. There were a lot of, you could say, Egor Demin haters when the Nets made this pick, and you fell on the right end of that spectrum. You were a believer from the start. I believe you had Egor mocked to the Nets at number 8, and now, there's still going to be questions. Like, he's, by no means a finished product, but it's looking very encouraging, that the Nets came away with a good player at that pick. So what have you, seen with Egor, what he's been done for the Nets early this season? How is it kind of matched, or maybe not matched, what you kind of expected when you mocked him to them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, is probably the guy who was highest on Egor out of like public-facing evaluators. I was not expecting him to come in and shoot 40% right away. I was really optimistic about his shot because even in college, when they weren't going in, it looked good, and he was not afraid to shoot him. He was getting him up at a really high clip, which is really encouraging when you're looking to project that stuff. And, then I got to spend time with him in the pre-draft process, and I got to see his personality, how he worked, how his mind turned when you watch film, and, how he accepts constructive criticism and all that. And I was like, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. Like, this kid's going to be, and also when I saw him in person, I was like, oh, he's gigantic. Like, and then he measured, he's almost 6'10" in shoes or whatever. So
I want to cut you off for 1 second. Like, that's those exact words. He's gigantic. I've heard from, in the beginning of the season when we asked like 5 other guys, like Nets veterans, about Egor, like what stood out. They're like, he's huge. Like, they didn't expect him to come in the locker room and tower over other people, but go on.
No, that's important. I like outliers when I'm looking at guys at the top of the draft, and you don't find guys who are 6'10", who are genius passers and, has shooting potential. And now the shooting potential looks actualized because he's confident. And it's not like he's just shooting spot ups. Like, he's running off movement. He's shooting off the bounce. It's awesome. I wasn't expecting him to be this good right away as a shooter. Straight up, but I'm not surprised. I'll say that. I knew he was going to struggle in the areas that he was struggling, with, because he's a little taller, guys are able to get into him and get under him as a ball handler. As he gets stronger, that's stuff that I think is going to be less of a worry. Like, I'm not really concerned about that long term. You see how Josh Giddey is able to basically just put his shoulder into people and like have them bounce off like these smaller dudes. So all that stuff I think is going to just get taken care of with physical transformation as he gets older and, continues to build his body through strength and conditioning. But yeah, he's been awesome, man. Like, I don't know. To me, it was an easy evaluation. It was something that people overthought. And I think it's because he got a lot of hype because he was killing non-conference guys. And then he got hurt and he struggled a little bit. And then he started playing well in the tournament. So it's like, I don't know, man. I like outlier guys. He had outlier tools. And you've all gotten to see his personality too. Like, and he's just a great kid who loves basketball. So I'll bet on those guys every time.
And I think that's a great, statement that you left off with. And I think that's kind of been underrated because, people, I think, look at like the measurables, the size, the production, and all that stuff. But when you're drafting, like you know this better than anyone, you're projecting. Like you're trying to see like what the potential is there. And something that Sean and a lot of the Nets people have talked about since picking Egor is the personality. Like the combination of he has these baseline of skills, and we're confident that he's going to work to maximize that skill set. And it seems like you got to see that firsthand during the draft process by just getting a look at his personality. And if you talk to him for 5 minutes, that shines through. It's like, this kid's really smart. This kid's about a lot of the right things, and this kid's going to work. So all those things, I think, have, lent confidence to the Nets that he was going to be able to do this stuff. And it's looked good early on. The thing that's kind of perplexed me is how off it seems like some of the draft evaluations were, not just from the sense of like, he's not going to be able to do some of these things, because some of that stuff has been accurate, but the shooting in particular was labeled as like a red flag for a lot of people. And it's not often you see, guys where it's a red flag, they're shooting, or you're concerned, or he shot 27% from three on whatever, albeit on high volume. And then you have those concerns, and then you come in and he looks like one of the better shooters in the league legitimately right away. So why do you think some people were so off on that evaluation? It's kind of been weird to see, because he was labeled as this like live dribble passing savant, pick and roll defensive court mapper, or court mapper of defenses. And he's come in and he hasn't really done that much of that stuff. And the thing he struggled with shooting has been his bread and butter. So it's been kind of strange to watch.
Yeah, look, I mean, like, we all have hits and misses when you're doing the draft. It's that's the name of the game. But I think that there's this thing that happens amongst the internet. It's not unique to scouting, where people start falling in line with the consensus viewpoints. And a lot of what the noise and the chatter is from the people who are into this is it's like hobbyists. It's people who maybe don't have the same access that somebody like I have. Like, not everybody's able to just go into a private workout and watch these guys work out, right? Like, and so like I have extra data points there. And then, like I also, like, I coached for a decade and a half, and, I see like how people can develop certain skills, and some things you do need to eye test. And like, if Yegor's form was really bad and he had the same percentages, I'd be worried. But he always had really clean form, and he was really confident, and he shot a ton of them. And like, that's the indicator that you look for. Does it look really clean? Is the kid a worker? And are there any indicators outside of just the raw percentages that you can look at? There were raw indicators. You don't like bad shooters that shoot at the volume he shot at don't end up ending up as bad shooters. Like, they fix it. That's the only thing you do in the NBA is shoot. And then he's got the size that he could just shoot over people too. So it's like the confidence that he had to shoot the shots that he was shooting, regardless of makes or misses. You add in the injury, you look at the person. I don't know. To me, it was just always very clear he was going to shoot the ball. Again, I didn't think it was going to be this quickly, but it was always clear to me that it was going to happen. And that's why, I ended up way higher on him, because you can't just look at the numbers as they are on their sports reference page, because these players are going to develop. So you have to be able to project that out. And if you're really doing it and you're watching and you're looking at the numbers and you know what to look for, it becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I've said with Egor, like the shooting, I'm confident him shooting at this level, that it's going to give him a floor at the NBA. And then the ceiling seems like it's going to depend on some of the other stuff. Like, does he add that strength? Does he become a guy who can leverage his passing ability with some legitimate advantage creation? Can he play through some contact at the rim? Like you, I've had some, a decent amount of confidence that he's going to develop physically. Like, he's going to add some strength and weight. And I think that while he's not like the twitchiest or doesn't have the most shake, you hope, like you said, you can just get downhill and try to like kind of bump some people off their spots, get to 2 feet, play in the lane, do all of those things. If some of those things can come along, which is, it's a big if, what do you kind of view as Yegor's like ceiling or his potential at the NBA level?
Man, it's hard to say. I mean, like if he ends up getting to a point where he's comfortable with his body being able to play with that physicality, it's really hard for me to put a ceiling on who he is and who he becomes. I mean, they're different players, but it took a while for Denny Avdia to become an all-star, and he was a kid who went, I think, a pick ahead of where Egor went, it took a different situation. It took a different opportunity for him to where he was going to be used properly. But I think the Nets are using him properly and have a better situation with more stability and a plan that Denny didn't get until he was in Portland. So to me, like I could easily see him being, an all-star. And again, different games. Denny's much more downhill, who can shoot. Egor is looking like a shooter who hopefully is going to be able to get downhill more. So it's going to be about him just getting stronger, to me, tightening that handle a little bit. I don't think his handle is like loose by any means, but again, like he's so tall that it's easy for smaller guys because of his weight to be able to check him and play with physicality and get underneath him. Once he gets stronger, he's just going to be able to body those guys. And so that to me is just like the biggest thing. And if he could do that, if he commits to that, and if his body responds to that kind of program, really the sky is the limit. Again, yes, he's got to be able to get to the rim and play through contact there. That'll be the next thing. But if once he's able to get paint touches more consistently, that's where his playmaking opens up in a completely new way, because he can make every pass in the book. He's one of the best he's going to be one of the, 5 best passers in the league. And the more often he can get into the paint, along with his shooting, he's going to be able to spray the ball all over. So I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't want to put a ceiling on it. And I don't want to, belittle to what he could be, because there's the perception that they didn't reach for him. And to me, he's the sky truly is the limit. And if you see it at the rate that he improved his 3-point shooting, it would really make me scared to bet against him fixing the rest of his game.
Nets fans will love to hear that. But we got 4 other Nets rookies that I want to get into a little bit. So what have we seen from those guys? Who's standing out the most? We'll get into all that when we continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Guys, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If TurboTax didn't file for you in the last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, coming back from the break, got Corey Tulaba of No Ceilings here talking about the Nets rookie class. And we just hit on Egor Demin. They got 4 other rookie first-round picks. So of those guys, Nolan Traore, Drake Powell, Danny Wolf, Ben Surratt, which one of those guys with what they've done early this season has stood out the most to you, and do you have the most confidence is going to be a rotation-level player in the NBA long-term?
To me, it's Danny.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I like outlier kind of unicorny guys, and he offers skill set as a 7-footer that you just don't find all that often. I'm also somebody who had Derek Queen at number 3 on my board. And I think that their games are have similarities in them. The way that he handles his passing, and he's always been a little turnover prone with his passing. So, that's definitely something he's got to iron out as he's able to show more of that off through his career. But I like his ability to space the floor, play like a wing and a guard as with handle and take advantages, and then be able to use his strength and kind of mismatch smaller guys too. You know, I have some defensive question marks, but I just think he has such a cool skill set. And when you're building like if you have Egor at like the 3 and Danny potentially at the 4, that's like a really cool duo of high field guys with real size that could space the floor and do some really unique things for an offense. So to me, those are the most interesting guys.
I'm Danny.
By far.
I'm curious. I've had like some questions, you know, if you look at it just like his offensively, like he's flashed the skills for sure. Like he's had the flashes of advantage creation, of downhill scoring, some passing, some 3-point shooting, but the overall body of work up to this point, there hasn't really been a spot on the floor where he's been scoring efficiently from. Like he struggled finishing, you know, around the rim because he's obviously a pretty grounded athlete. And he started off really hot from 3. Like he was red hot out of the gate, and he's cooled off a lot as of late. So my question has kind of been like, where on the floor is he scoring from consistently? Is he going to be able to, you know, finish at the rim to kind of capitalize on those advantages he can create? And then is he going to be able to play off the ball? How's the 3-point shooting going to come along? It seems like you're pretty bullish on his 3-point shooting, but just what would you say to people who have those concerns about he's like this grounded athlete? Can he score around the basket? And then the 3-point shot hasn't looked great overall up to this point.
I think they're all valid concerns. You know, I'm not nearly as confident in any of the other Nets players as I am in Egor. But the reason I would pick Danny out of this group is, one, rookies are all generally mostly terrible. The Nets don't have a lot of stability within their offense to begin with. So you're making the job of all these young players even harder. And so, you know, this is what you're looking for at this point from all of these guys, Egor included, is like flashes of who they can become. And then it's about looking and honing those flashes to make them more consistent. And the most interesting flashes out of those other guys to me are Danny, because you can go and get Drake Powell in this draft. You can get Nolan Traore in this draft. You can't always get somebody like Danny Wolf who has those skills. And so when you see a guy who not only has those skills, but, you know, is also a pretty solid processor and smart kid. I mean, obviously he's probably a genius kid. He went to Yale. But he's also playing in a pretty new role. Like last year at Michigan was the first time he got to play like that. He was much more traditional back to the basket big at Yale. So like he's also, you know, kind of new to this play style in this structured kind of environment. So like I would just stress patience with him. I mean, look, defensively, he's not a 5. He's not going to be able to protect the rim and be that kind of player, but I think he moves well enough to guard the 4. He's definitely got some holes to his game that he's going to have to iron out, but I just think he's got a really intriguing, interesting skill set, and teams are going to continue to go bigger and stronger. Like that's going to be the new trend over the next couple of years. And I think he's going to be able to play with those guys.
All right. Beyond that, I would assume, you know, Drake Powell and Nolan Traore are the 2 guys who have shown the most flashes up to this point. Which of those guys would you say that you're feeling better about at this point?
Probably Drake. I mean, I'm not a big fan of either of those guys. I know that Nolan started to flash some stuff as of late, but generally I think he's pretty terrible. Drake, I think, is just a guy who, like, you know who he is already. Mm-hmm. He's going to hit some mid-range shots every once in a while that make you think that there's more there. And he's going to be a 3-and-D guy otherwise. And he's an awesome defender, super athletic. He might always leave you wanting more, but at the end of the day, he'll fill a role and be able to play off of guys and not demand touches. So I feel safer about him than, you know, the other guys.
Okay. What with Nolan has you very cool? Because Nolan's been the talk of the Nets fan base over the last few weeks. He's been playing at a pretty high level, albeit against some tanking teams and not the best competition. But we think we have like a 12-game sample size now where he's averaging like 12.6 and 12.6 assists, you know, good assist to turnover ratio, is shooting better, at least like getting, you know, better finishing at the rim, some of the mid-range game, showing a little bit of confidence from 3. But what is giving you pause? And I'm assuming it's something that obviously you've had concerns about going, you know, deep back into the draft process.
Yeah. I mean, he's a really good passer. Like he's got great vision. Like he always has. I mean, I got to see him at the Nike Hoop Summit and he was like one of the best players there. and we were really high on him coming into the year. I just think he plays really fast. I don't love how he operates out of like ball screens, even though he's a really gifted passer. I don't really buy his shooting all that much as something that's going to be super consistent. And I generally think he's a really poor defender. I would love to be incorrect about that. All of that stuff. I think he's probably going to be an NBA player. I just don't know if he's going to be somebody who you expect to be a night in, night out starter, I guess is my thing. Because I don't think that he has as much potential to play seamlessly off the ball in a way that I think you need from a guy who's going to be who's not like good enough to be a primary. Like if he's not somebody who's going to lead your offense and score 25 points a night, I don't know what his role is other than like a change of pace guard off the bench if you actually want to be like a successful winning team.
Yeah, I understand completely, and I've had some of the same concerns about the shooting, and I said, like, it's going to be a big swing skill for him because if he can't play off the ball, like you said, like he's not going to be a guy, especially if the Nets come away with a Darren Peterson or a Kingston Flemings or one of those guys. Like he's not going to just dominate the usage. So can he play off the ball? I think he's gotten a little bit better as of late with not just being this guy who like turns the corner and just goes 1,000 miles an hour into a 7-footer's chest. He's starting to kind of, snake the pick and roll, like take some of the like probe, put guys in jail, Nash dribble around the baseline, all those things. So it's looked better as of late, but I do understand, why you would come away with some of those concerns about him. But we'll see if he can develop the 3-point shooting, if he can kind of change some of the process of how he plays with. But going to be a lot of questions. But Corey, appreciate you taking the time. That's all we got about the rookies on today's episode. But there are several other Nets players that fans should be monitoring the rest of the season who Brooklyn will face decisions on contractually this offseason. So who are those players? What should Nets fans be looking for from them? I'll get into all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, ever want to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. You'll love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds an extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it can also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, and want to get into some of the players that the Nets are going to be facing decisions on for sure contractually this summer, and several of them have been significant contributors for the last 4 seasons. And I want to start with Day'Ron Sharpe, player who the Nets have a $6 million team option on this summer. And I think that it's become even more evident this season that Day'Ron Sharpe seems like a keeper, whether for the Nets or for another team. So we'll see how they approach that. Obviously, they're going to be facing a decision between Day'Ron Sharpe and Nick Claxton, not necessarily having to choose one or the other, but how do we move forward? Do we keep both of these guys? Do we move off one of them? Which one would we move off? But if you look at Day'Ron, I think that he's made a very strong case as to why he should stick around. You look at what he's done this season. He's at 8.5 points, 6.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.1 steals on 56.4% shooting in only 15 minutes per game. So he's producing pound for pound, minute for minute, like one of the better centers in the league. And you look at it, if you take a look at the on-off numbers, the Nets have been 8 points better per 100 possessions with Day'Ron on the court versus off. And that is the 8th highest mark in the NBA among all centers who have played over 800 minutes. So this has become a recurring theme with Day'Ron. And sure, some people will come and look, he's playing against bench units. It's easier. He's also playing with some bench units for the Nets that have frankly not been very good in terms of the supporting cast around him. And you look at it, at a certain point, the recurring theme, the consistent trend, it just becomes the norm. And I said the Nets are 8 points better per 100 possessions with Day'Ron on the court this season. They were 13 points better with him on the court last season. The year before that, they were 7 points better So they're just consistently better with Day'Ron on the court. And Day'Ron has taken significant strides, especially defensively, in terms of the way that he's focused on his body, improved his mobility, improved his conditioning, been able to play a variety of defensive schemes. Like, Day'Ron used to look like a disaster. If the Nets were trying to switch, he looked like a disaster. Drop coverage, he looked like he couldn't do it. Trying to double or play at the level, he wasn't mobile enough to kind of hedge and get back. And this year, the Nets have switched sometimes. They've played him at the level a ton, as they have with Nick Claxton, and he's looked very effective defensively. Offensively, he's become better finishing. He's become a high-level floor processor, I would say, and a pretty good passer for a big man. So all in all, I said, the Nets have that $6 million team option on Day'Ron. They can pick that up. Like, they're definitely not going to decline it unless they're going to extend him. They can either pick it up or they can look to extend him. And if I were them, I would lock him in on a long-term contract this summer. Is he going to allow that? If they give him, depending on what they offer him, we'll see. But I would lock him down on a 3 or a 4-year contract. Get him locked in before, like, the cat's sort of out of the bag, for lack of a better phrase. I just think that if you can lock him down on a 3 or a 4-year contract, paying him somewhere from $10 to $15 million annually, I think that contract's going to age well. And I think it will be an asset, especially if he continues to progress. So that's what I'm seeing with Day'Ron. I expect him to stay with the Nets, and I would think that they probably try to lock him in on some kind of an extension this summer. The other guy that the Nets re-signed this offseason to the same exact contract as Day'Ron is Zaire Williams, who they also have a $6 million team option on this summer. And look, for Zaire, I'm not going to say that the Nets definitely aren't going to pick up that option. I think it's way more, it's way more of a question mark than Day'Ron, obviously. Like, if anything's going to keep Zaire here, it's his defense. He's been good on that end for extended stretches this season. He's been a spark plug off the bench, defensively for extended stretches. He's obviously got good size, good length, and the motor, it seems like he knows, like, he has to be really good defensively. He has to be a positive on that end. Otherwise, there's just no way he's going to stick around, because if you look at the offense, I mean, he's shooting 32% from three this season, highest volume of his career, but still 32%. That's about what he's at for his career over 5 seasons. He's improved from 2 efficiency-wise, but the volume has dipped, and he has a negative assist-to-turnover ratio. So if you look at offensively, like, what are the things that he's above average at? There really isn't anything. Like, the main thing you would say he's bringing to the table is the three-point shooting, and he's never been, really even a decent three-point shooter throughout his career. So with that, with the, limitations that he has as a ball handler and a self-creator, also the turnovers, it just offensively, it really hasn't come along. So defensively is the thing that the Nets that would be able to keep him around with the Nets, and maybe there being some hope that he can continue to progress. So how do the Nets play it on that $6 million team option? I would say they probably decline it, but at the same time, it is valuable. We've seen it. It's valuable to have these mid-sized contracts on your books, these $6 million contracts that can be used as salary fillers in trades. So I'm not going to say they definitely decline it. Like, there is value in having a contract like that on the books, and Zaire has shown some things defensively, but I think that the offense overall leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm not sure whether they're going to pick that up and keep him around. Last guy that has played really with the Nets that I'm going to talk about is Jalen Wilson, who obviously has been here since that 2023 draft, and he's had his moments, but overall, I think that Jalen, maybe he can be like a fine end of the bench guy. You look at him this season, he's shooting a little bit better from threes, around 35% from three, but it's a smaller sample size because he just hasn't played that much. Like, he's not really, doing anything with the ball in his hands. He's not really a guy who's driving, who's facilitating, who can finish around the basket. He's a below average 3-point shooter to maybe he can get to average. He's been a little bit better this season, obviously has the athletic limitations. I just think, it is what it is with Jalen. Like, he's 25 years old. The Nets, he's going to be a restricted free agent this summer if the Nets extend him a qualifying offer. Otherwise, he'd be an unrestricted free agent. And I think that we might be reaching the end of the road here with Jalen, because it's 3 seasons. And, the Nets have some other guys who they brought in, who they've taken flyers on, who I think might offer some more promise than Jalen, and are either his age or younger. And those 2 guys are Josh Minott and Ochai Agbaji, the players the Nets acquired at the trade deadline. And Agbaji, made his Nets debut during that loss to the Pacers. He didn't really do anything, but he's a guy who's 25 years old, had a pretty good season last year, and then fell out of the rotation with Toronto when they had to salary dump him to get under the luxury tax. But he, at least, like, if you look at him compared to a guy like Jalen Wilson, he's a much better athlete. He has higher pass pedigree. Obviously, him and Jalen are former teammates, but he's really struggled shooting the ball in a big way. But better athlete, can offer some more ancillary skills, should profile better defensively. And if the 3-point shooting could get back on track, maybe you have something there. I mean, he is also going to be a restricted free agent or could be a restricted free agent this summer if the Nets extend him a qualifying offer. So we'll see how they approach that. But the other guy who I would have more, I'd be more encouraged about being here beyond this season is Josh Minot, who has not yet played, but 23-year-old kid, really good size at 6'2", was shooting it at a really high level, albeit on small sample size with the Celtics this season, has shown some ancillary skills, can do some things defensively, and he is under contract next season for a minimum. He's under contract for $2.6 million next season. It's non-guaranteed, but if I'm the Nets, based on what he showed with the Celtics earlier this season, I'm guaranteeing that minimum contract and seeing what I have and giving him a little bit of an extended runway, and he probably fills that end of the bench role, for a Jalen Wilson, or maybe even gets into that rotation role and takes the spot of a guy like Zaire Williams. So we'll see, but I'd be pretty encouraged with the fact that Minot, despite not having played here yet, could stick around, and the Nets could guarantee his contract, because I think that he is the most intriguing of these kind of like wing forward guys that I've talked about in this group. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's all I got for you guys on today's episode of Locked On Nets. Hope you guys enjoyed the talk with Corey. If you do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you can do to engage is much appreciated. The Nets got a couple more days off, and they're going to be back in action on Thursday. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.